As a Filipino who speaks Tagalog as their main language, I used to not understand why there were so many people that looked like me in America, but we could not understand each other. It was up until recently that I realized that there were reasons as to why this occurs. Through my research, I discovered reasons as to why people from various different ethnicities do not speak their native tongue. With that being said, magandang umaga o hapon, good morning or good afternoon. My name is Alyssa Cassandra Suna, and I'm a Filipino born in America who is raised both here in America and in the Philippines. And now I am a senior at the Global Studies World Language Academy at Tallwood High School. You may be wondering how anything I said beforehand relates to my senior project. And in all honesty, before all of my research, I would understand how anything could possibly relate, because I thought it was a matter of not caring enough about the language to speak it, understand it, or even bother learning it. But what I learned was something totally different. Through my topic of interest, which is imperialism's impacts on other countries and how the Philippines has been affected by America, I have discovered a plethora of reasons as to why people of all ethnicities, not just Filipinos, do not know their native tongue and are sometimes disconnected from their culture. Many people seem to know the history of the Philippines and how it came to be an independent state, but it is more complex than people make it out to be. The fight for Filipino independence from the Spanish can be traced before the Spanish-American War. With Spanish colonization lasting nearly 300 years, anti-imperialists made their voices heard about wanting the Spaniards to get off their soil. Many citizens just wanted to be free without someone else watching their every move. They wanted their independence. Influential figures such as Jose Rizal, a Filipino writer, spoke about the atrocities the Spanish committed against the Philippines through his writings. His work dealt with the Filipino society and its need for change away from the Spanish rule. Many people from the Philippines and most of Europe were able to get their hands on his books and poetry, with many people, like Emilio Aguinaldo, discussing the book in private, which sparked the idea of a revolution in Filipino nationalists' minds. Now, we get to the part that people are familiar with, the Spanish-American War. Though the Philippines was a major player in this war, it is not talked much about in history books, and more so focuses on the Latin American countries. But with America's role in this, it triggered a series of events soon thereafter. The American military made Filipino nationalists believe that they were going to help them win back their land. But in reality, once the Spanish had left, America came and filled the role that they had left behind, with this starting the Filipino-American War. We were denounced as traitors and rebels. We destroyed the homes to which you had been welcomed as honored guests. These words were said by Philippine revolutionist leader Emilio Aguinaldo as he addressed the American people and their government after 4 months of battling the Filipino-American War. Unfortunately, as hard as the Filipino military fought, their actions fell short and the Philippines had lost the war. For the next 48 years, America had definitely left their impact on the Philippines, one of those being Filipino nurses. Filipino nurses currently make up 15.25% of the working abroad nurses, and this would not have been possible without America building medical schools and teaching American courses in English and not allowing Filipinos to speak in Tagalog. Even after the Philippines gained independence, America still had a strong effect on Filipinos, this carried on to Filipino Americans, and is called colonial mentality. Colonial mentality is defined as the perception of ethnic and cultural inferiority, as it is a form of internalized racial oppression. This is evident in the fact that many Filipinos would rather learn about other cultures rather than their own, and is deemed as a direct consequence of the Philippines' long history of colonialism. It is truly mind-blowing how complex a country's history can be. While writing this paper, something that stuck out to me was though the Philippines is an independent state, traces of the original colonizers are still evident in their culture. For one, the name of the Philippines, which was named after King Philip II of Spain, and as well as the language, with Tagalog and Filipino having heavy Spanish influence. Though colonization has had many negative effects in the Philippines would not be the same as you and I know it today, and without it, the Philippines might not exist at all. For my action, I chose the leading topic to be about the importance of cultural identity here in America. As I said previously, my senior project paper focused on the imperialization of the Philippines by America and how it affected Filipinos not only in the Philippines, but also their everlasting effects on Filipinos abroad. For the action part of my project, I wanted to reflect on how America has affected not only Filipinos, but other minorities. So, for my action, I interviewed three different people with different cultural backgrounds. The first one being Professor Anil Nair, an Indian American business professor at Old Dominion University, Mrs. Sandra Alban, a Spanish teacher at Tallwood High School, and last but not least, Professor Melody Agbisit, an active member of the Filipino community here in Virginia Beach. We discussed many questions revolving around the topic of culture. Questions included, but were not limited to, how does culture impact society? How do you keep your culture alive in America? Why is culture important to you on an individual scale? And what is the importance of respecting other people's cultures? We branched off of these questions and delved into deeper discussions relating to their personal experiences. As I was listening to what each individual said, I learned something new each time. With Professor Nair, he related business to culture and how it is important to understand other people's culture while working with them, so you can think the way they will, and by doing so, it gives people a sense of belonging and security, making them want to continue working with you. Another question I asked relating to keeping cultural identity is, how do you keep your culture alive? And he mentioned how he and his family are able to do it. He talked about how something as small as food or something as big as traveling back to your home country can make all the difference, and it opens new doors for individuals to learn something about their culture each and every time. For Mrs. Alban, she talked about understanding your cultural identity. A part of what makes you you is how you present yourself and knowing your culture and representing it in a certain way. When surrounding yourself with others of the same cultural background, you know how to have fun and how to present yourself in the manner that is expected from you. Towards the beginning of the interview, Mrs. Alban mentioned how she was an educator from the Global Studies and World Language Academy, and there are instances that the teachers and students get to travel abroad as part of an exchange program. She mentioned that it is her responsibility to teach students traveling with her the important aspects of the exchange country's culture, so students can be respectful and not overstep boundaries. As for Professor Agbisit, she talked about how culture contributes to society. Professor Agbisit talked about implicit biases and ideals in man and how they appear different in cultures. With this, she mentioned how individuals have to understand and learn about other cultures. Professor Agbisit even mentioned that there are even differences between cultures of people in different regions of the Philippines. She is an Ilocano Filipino, and growing up around many other Ilocanos, she grew up believing that being Ilocano was equivalent to being Filipino. It wasn't until she started middle school that she met Tagalog and Visayan Filipinos. She knew that they were different, but just could not pinpoint how. It was not until she learned about Spanish colonization in the Philippines where she realized why they were different. She came from a region further away from the Spanish colonizers, so her culture had not shifted from a matriarchy to patriarchy like other regions. It seems very small to make a big difference, but it did. I'm glad to have had a conversation with these three because I was able to educate myself more not only on the significance of culture, but the beauty of it as well. As we were finishing the interviews, my interviewees told me that it was a pleasure to share their culture and their thoughts of cultural identity with me before this project. And in the words of Professor Nair, I learned something new, and I'm glad younger generations are passionate about keeping not only their culture, but other cultures alive and sharing it with others. Through my research and action, I learned more about culture as a whole, when I thought I already knew so much about it. My whole action came to be because I was upset with people not knowing their native tongue, but I've come to learn that I was in no place to be upset. Immigrants that come to America just want to be able to fit in the setting they are put in other words, assimilation. This is why some older generations of immigrants did not teach their kids their native tongue, because they did not want them to struggle. Fortunately enough, my family did teach me the Filipino language, which I will forever be grateful for. Culture is something that can be kept alive through communities including family and friends, food, traditions, and so much more, not just language. Culture is never ending, and we should always respect people and their cultures, no matter our individual views on it. Without culture, America would not be the same as it is today. Whether you believe America is a melting pot or a salad bowl, it comes down to the fact that culture is a major ingredient to all of it. So, as you continue with your day, try something new from another culture. Maybe try to learn a new dance from another country. Enjoy songs in another language like OPM or K-pop. Go to a club meeting for another culture, or even travel. Learn something new and share it with others. I am Alyssa Cassandra Sunga, and I am proud to be Filipino-American. My experiences of being Filipino and American is what makes me the person I am today, and I would not change that for the world. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me and what I had to say, and I hope you have an amazing day. And as they say in the Philippines, mabuhay. Salamat.